Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Revilo Recap, Episode 3. I'm trying to get someone else jumped into this hangout, so that is why it's taking just a minute to. I'm trying to get Isaac joined in from the latest episode. So if you will bear with me for just a minute while I try and connect him in, that would be awesome. Let's see. Trying to. Let's see one more time. Let's try one more thing and see what happens. I've not quite perfected the Google Hangouts, but let's see. All right, so while we wait and try and see if he jumps in, for anybody that is tuning in and watched the episode 3 of the World of Revilo, Age of Discovery, season 1, episode 3, it is Road to the Great Conclave, because at the end of episode 2, everybody was kind of stuck in the middle of the Forest of the Dead. And when they were in there, a lot of stuff started to go down. They were lured in there by some outlanders who were trying to bring in a bounty on the Duke's head. And so there wasn't. They were trying to get him into the Forest of the Dead to try and then take him back to the main city on the eastern coast called Merk's Hollow. Let's see. We're still trying to get Isaac on board, but I don't think that's happening yet. So I think I'll just do a recap, and we will try and get this worked out for the next time. Just let him know. So they had convinced the group to go into the Forest of the Dead because they had convinced them that some of their friends had broken down their cart and they needed help getting them out and getting the cart with all these goods and all these valuables that were from this foreign land that were worth lots of not just money but interest to some of the characters. So especially to Kolb, who is an alchemist, there were a lot of ingredients and things that you can't find elsewhere in Revilo. So he thought that this cart, if they got this, there would be so many great things that they could possibly experiment with and try lots of new things. But when they got into the Forest of the Dead, then things started to go awry. A lot of the characters didn't realize that if you start making sounds within this area, it alerts these unliving creatures to their presence, and all of a sudden things started to go really bad. One of the Outlanders, the NPCs that were in there, quickly got killed, but the rest of the group managed to kind of duck and roll away. And right at the beginning of that episode, Galron, who is a Grinotar and used to living in the Forest of the Dead because that's where a lot of the Grinitars reside, managed to roll and grab a couple of the crew. Grabbed the Duke and also grabbed Kolb and rolled under a giant long tree trunk and tree stump type area and hid. But as that happened, the ground opened up and pulled both the Duke and Kolb under the ground. Now, the real reason I did that as the GM was because both of those players couldn't make it. Drew and Eric had other things that they couldn't make it to the game. So I had to figure out a way to take them out of the game, because one of the things I really don't enjoy doing is having to play the player characters while trying to run the game, especially since a lot of the time when I'm running a game, I'm just kind of making it up as I go. I have the basic elements. I have ideas of what's going on in the overall setting and some of the characters NPCs that might come into play. But I like being able to be flexible as the different players change their mind and go a certain route. So I don't want to feel locked into anything. So trying to juggle that, trying to remember things, and trying to keep characters like on the target that their character path is on is challenging for me to do. So they just kind of got sucked up and pulled under the ground. Luckily, this was in an area of the Forest of the Dead where the ground, even though everything is kind of dead, it's magically animated in ways that it allowed the ground to just kind of open up, and there's these new pockets underground that are just kind of hollow and cavernous, and so they just kind of got pulled down underneath while the rest of the party managed to fight off some of the unliving. Now, the ones that were still there was Galron, who was from the Forest of the Dead. There was Xenos, who is another Grinotar from the Forest of the Dead, that his path had crossed before with Galron. And then there was a new character who hadn't been in the previous episodes, named Erzor, who was knocked out unconscious inside the cart itself. And now, the reason he was in there and they hadn't noticed before was because he was trying to convince these Outlanders that they didn't really belong, they shouldn't be bringing their plants and these foreign pieces into the land that are then going to change the environmental makeup of the different regions. And the Outlanders that heard that, and he kept nagging on them about, just knocked them out and put them in their wagon. So when that happened, they couldn't figure out. Sorry, I got totally distracted. So what happened was things. So I just had a complete mind wipe. So when they knocked him out, he just woke up in the middle of this battle where the party was trying to fight these unliving creatures, and they had gotten one of the Outlanders that had lured them in, grabbed him, drug him into this hollowed out tree, and then just tied him up and were trying to get information out of him. Now, in the previous episode, the Duke had kind of pocketed this piece of paper that had a wanted poster for his head from Merc's Hollow. And the reason, as I had it just kind of slip out of his pocket to help pull the storyline along and bring more of a decision making when it came to these Outlanders and what should they do. So because it's a little bit odd, and because there's a bounty on his head, I wanted to see what direction the characters were going to go and what sort of allegiance they would have to this member of their party. Because though their paths had crossed before, a lot of them, that it's kind of new, this recent bond that was formed. Especially, this is only episode 3 that we were just playing, so I wanted to see where that went. Now, most people that are indigenous to the area and to Revilo do not necessarily want to side with the Outlanders, especially this Baron Merc von Horvath, who put the bounty on his head and who has recently kind of staged a coup in this city on the eastern side of Revilo. So that's how that worked. Now, once they had the guy all tied up and they were trying to decide what to do, the Duke was ready to just tie him to a tree and leave him there, which is very on point for his character. But some of the other characters kind of wrestled with the idea as to whether, especially Galaron, as to whether or not that was something that he could do as a character. And he definitely was not on board for that. Now, when that happened, they decided to go ahead, and he told them how to fix the cart that they had kind of sabotaged. And once the cart was fixed, they made it so that he was going to be the one pulling the cart. Now, along the path, they pulled the cart out and they made it all the way to outside of the Forest of the Dead unscathed. They were able to keep things a little quieter on the way out and managed to get by without any more attacks by any of the unliving or even the Leopard that they were attacked earlier in. Now, the place that they're heading to is the Great Conclave. And the Great Conclave is this giant annual event where representatives of each of the Reaper tribes come to meet to talk over all the main issues that are going on in Revilo. As so much seems to happen each year, they really need to get together to try and iron out and make sure that things are on track for the following year. Now, Reapers were the very first species on the planet, outside of the gods. And with that, as they've branched out to the different regions of Revilo, they've all evolved slightly differently. And so all these other species around the continent know that there's going to be this great conclave. So over the years, there's become a giant bazaar outside of the icy divide, because they know that there's going to be people coming from the Waiju, and people coming from the salts, and people coming from the floating forest. So everybody brings their goods in. So it's a great place to get something that you might not be able to get the rest of the year, or something that isn't taken on trade routes quite as often. So this is where everybody's going. They decided they needed to go there because, one, Galaron has some necrotic arm issues going on, because he was attacked while in the Forest of the Dead by what he believes is the Veil. So he's got a kind of cursed arm. And so the Cole wants to go for the merchants, some of the exotic materials that he'll be able to get while at the bazaar. And we have some of the other characters. We have the Duke, that's just going along for the adventure and to see what he can get out of the bazaar, probably what he can get from other people. And Xenos, Xenos was not in the game this episode, so he just kind of strolled along in the shadows. But on the path, they ran into a Persinnolite, which are long, almost they're kind of weasel-like in the length of their body. They have long ringed tails and almost raccoon-like, but they're much larger. And they ran into one who asked if he could share their fire, and they allowed him, and now he's traveling with them. Well, along the way, they were introduced to one of his traveling companions, Thalia, who seems to be able to turn herself inside or invisible, and bring herself back into visibility depending on what the situation is. There's a lot of curiosity there with the group itself as to who these people are and how she is able to turn invisible. But overall, they seem fairly trustworthy. So I think they're going to stay with them for a while now. And when that happens, when that happened, they also came across a outpost, almost like a roadblock of gray scrolls. And gray scrolls are some of the nastiest creatures in the land. They are very barbaric in nature. They were part of the Reaper tribes originally, but they were exiled. And after being exiled, they grew even darker, and their distaste for everyone else grew even stronger. And it's been quite some time since then. But they had created an outpost on this main thoroughfare to the Great Conclave, so that they could collect things from people that pass by, almost just kind of trying to take a little bit of what everybody was passing through had. But we had both Kolb and the Duke talk their way through it, and basically make the Gray Scrolls give the party a bunch of goods, all the way up until the point where there was a really big conflict, and Galaron had to shoot them all, or shoot a couple of them. He rolled really well, invoked some good aspects, and was able to and then was able to get in some good shots, and they pretty much convinced the other two Gray Scrolls that were there that they needed to go about their business and get off the road. It was 2 hours, the episode. It felt like a lot happened in that short amount of time, and it feels like it's progressing the episode a lot further along. But for these 2 hour segments, there's only so much that can get done especially with a bunch of players playing and laying out storyline and things like that as well. On the next episode, I'm guessing they'll continue moving up the road towards the Great Conclave, but it's going to be quite some time before they actually get there. Next time, we are going to be streaming live on Twitch. We're going to move in that direction, assuming all goes well. And that is going to be delayed. Instead of on the second 2 weeks from Thursday when we played. The next time will be on a Wednesday, and it'll be 3 weeks from then. So it's about 2.5 weeks from now, because in 2 weeks, both myself and Drew will be at MegaCon. So there won't be any time for gaming because we will be working the booth that weekend, and that day is a load-in day. So because I couldn't get anybody else to join in on the conversation, there is where I'm going to cut it short. And next time we'll try and get some more people talking about questions about the system, the settings, things like that. Hopefully you will tune into the live game when we go live on Twitch. I'm sure myself and a bunch of other folks will be making announcements about that as we get closer. All right. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in, and I will talk to you soon.